computer. And welcome back to another episode of Working Class Fishing. I am John Morris. Somewhere on this screen is Brian Keachley. And our guest this evening, the delinquent duo from the great state of Texas, is Holli and Alex Grant. Thank y'all so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us. This is so exciting.
Well, Alex, Holli, I saw y'all for the first time at the Mesquite Fly Fishing Show, and I didn't stop by the booth. I wanted to, but you guys seemed busy, and I didn't want to interrupt you guys just to be like, hey, I'm doing a live stream. You guys want to come on? No, it seemed like y'all had much more important matters going on, but thank you for taking some time out of your evening and coming on here to talk to us. So I know quite a bit about y'all now, but if you would let our listeners know some about y'all, that'd be excellent.
Okay, Alex, you want to go first?
Yeah, I guess I'm on the quality team with the aerospace company here around Fort Worth, and I've actually only really been fly fishing for about 4 or 5 years now. My wife, my wonderful wife here, is the one that actually introduced me to it. I had been bait casting all my life, and it was just not what I was hoping for until finally she introduced me to fly fishing, and now it's a burning passion that I can't get out of.
Yeah, and I'm Holli. I've been fishing for a long time. And so for me, I am currently a teacher. And so I teach AP Bio, AP Environmental Science, Honors Biology, Freshman Biology. And so for me, moving down to Texas about a decade ago, I found it really hard to convert over to conventional fishing, I guess. And so to me, I always had my little rods and my little vest, and I didn't know that Texas had any opportunities for fly fishing. And then met Alex, and I was like, ooh, this is a way that I can impress Alex and show him that I can fly fish. And so we went out and had a blast. And then we actually started looking for spots to go fishing. And then it just kind of snowballed into there. We started laughingstock fly fishing in 2019, the last day of 2019. And then we just kind of snowballed into this side hustle that we both do. And I'm not as technical as Alex, so he is our official rod builder. And for me, I kind of do the supplemental stuff. So whether that is making hats, knit hats for the cold weather. I have currently started making rod socks. So doing the kind of crafty side to supplement some of the stuff that he does, because I was kind of jealous at how technical he is, and I am not that way. So we kind of make that duo work for us. So that's it.
You definitely make up for it by being able to see color.
Oh yeah, that's right.
She's our color coordinator.
Yes. So interesting fact about Alex, he is colorblind, so I get to be the color coordinator. So that is super fun.
That is so awesome.
Very cool.
So oh, go ahead, Brian.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just going to say, so now you move to Texas, you come in, you do this whole thing, and you come in, one of you is a conventional angler, the other is fly angler. I got to ask, how did you guys meet? Just it's off the topic of fishing, but how did you guys meet?
Well, actually, we met through a dating app. We were not really running in each other's circles to the point where we probably would have never crossed paths. But I was working as a technician selling security systems, so I saw maybe 2-3 people in a day, and I realized I probably wasn't going to meet the person I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. So we just both independently started using dating apps. I think I won her over with a really crappy pun on my profile, and that really set the tone.
Yeah, humor wins me over every time, so I will take that any day. So I got that. And for me, I mean, my schedule is so busy. When I first moved down here, I taught 7th and 8th grade initially. Then I coached 7th and 8th grade sports. And then the second year, I was the head coach at the high school, in addition to coaching the middle school teams, in addition to teaching 7th and 8th grade science. in addition to learning how to drive a bus and got my CDL. And so like that, just because I was at the time I was single, and like it just kept getting to the point where I was like, hey, I'll do whatever you need me to and whatever committees. And it just got so big that it just consumed my time. And by the time I got to go out and do anything, I was so exhausted that I'm like, my pool like was not very big. So dating apps work for us. And ironically enough, like we are 7 miles apart when we first met. So the whole time, his whole life was spent in our town here in Azle. And I moved to Azle in 2016. And so the fact that we were 7 miles apart, and there was no way we would have probably ever met unless it was a grocery store. And so it worked out for us.
I just didn't know if it was one of those things like you guys just like rolled down to the park or the river and you guys are both like casting and you like look over and you're like, you like to fish? And it's like, yeah, I like to fish. I didn't know if it was something like that. So
no. He was an easy conversion into fly fishing. It was like super easy to like get him converted. So there was no issue there.
Well, there was an issue. I remember you said that we had a blast first time out. It took me 6 weeks to get my first fish. So it was a grueling endeavor.
We may be a little competitive. So when I would kept catching fish and like I was just used to that, it was kind of eating them away. And then I think you got your first like pumpkin seed or something in a little creek, right?
Do not diss my pumpkin seed.
No, but I mean that's
yeah.
Right?
Hey, there's nothing wrong with panfish.
No, I still love it. Anytime I have an hour or two, I just run out to a creek near us to go fish them. They are a blast.
Yeah. And then from there, I mean, we escalated, man. We went from like little panfish, and then within 6 months, we got to the point where we would go down to the coast and go for reds, and we would do this stuff.
Nice.
So we, here we are, we're like new couple going and traveling and enjoying and doing all this fun stuff. And we actually we took some rods that we had. I had a Sage RPL 8 weight, which I loved. I still love it. And Alex had, what did you take down there?
It was a Cabela's little cheapy one that I bought that it wasn't anywhere near their top of the line kind of stuff. It was a budget deal I found on a rack, but I needed something in that weight class.
Yeah. So we take those down and we take our kayaks, which are not ocean kayaks by any means. So we were just not prepared for the coast at all, but we thought we'd go and try it. And, Alex hooks onto this huge bull red, like, I don't know, just by chance. And so he goes and he hooks it. And here I am, I have my kayak behind me and I have it tethered and I'm the photographer, like I'm trying to go and get a picture of him. He's wrestling with this red and all of a sudden the tip snaps. Oh my gosh. It was awful. And so, I mean, at least I witnessed it. But that day, like Alex was like taking the line and like bringing it in and trying to like at least hold on to him. And then what happened at the end?
It was right as I was trying to heave it up into the boat. I pulled him up out of the water. He broke the line. I didn't have a good enough shock on it. And I just thought I never wanted to make this mistake again.
Yeah. And then not 24 hours later, we were still down at the coast. I'm walking on the jetties down there in Port Aransas. And I don't have the right shoes on. I just have like regular, like kind of rubber soled ones. And I don't realize how slick those are. I slip on a jetty with my Sage RPL and I just snaps. So that was kind of the trip that we made the decision. We're like, you know what, if the sport can get expensive. If we can get to the point where maybe we can make our own, we could. And I think the best thing was my dad was actually the one that kind of pushed him into that. And do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, her dad is still probably one of the best anglers I've ever met in my life. This guy has fished all over the world. He is phenomenal. And so one day he just recommended, he said, you've got all these weird, quirky hobbies. If you can see my reloading equipment on the shelf back here. But he says, have you ever thought about trying to make a rod? And I thought, my God, that's crazy. I'm going to try it. And so it started with, I just took an old cardboard box from one of the pieces of equipment that actually is over there. And I cut some V's in the side and ran some duct tape so it wouldn't scratch up the blank, found some cheap ones on eBay, and I'd start cranking out some rods. And holy cow, it was a blast. I mean, it's tedious sometimes, but being able to customize it and make it just the way that you want it for very singular purpose driven. I make rods for specific fish on very specific waters, certain species. You can get as anally retentive about it as you want, or you can make it as easy as you want. but I've been enjoying it ever since, enough that we decided we wanted to try and sell some.
Yeah.
So that's the perfect segue into you guys are laughing stock fly fishing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, you guys make custom rods and a lot of really cool stuff, not just rods. You make shirts and hats, and you're talking about rod socks.
Yeah.
And I saw a cat wearing socks today on the internet. That was strange, but like that's really cool. And not only that, I've had the chance to cast. I have one of your rods on my table right here. That's a top secret mission that we'll disclose later. Maybe that just stays between us. But the rods are fantastic. They really are. I mean, I'm a subpar caster at best, and it felt excellent. You can pick something up, whether you know anything about it. You can pick up a golf club and be like, man, you know what? That feels pretty good. I don't know anything about golf, but it feels good. You could do the same thing with one of your rods. They are incredibly high quality, and you can tell that you've put the time and effort, not in just to making them beautiful, but into making a really good product.
And that's huge high praise. Like,
we really appreciate that.
We really appreciate that. And, you know, I guess the thing is like, we do put pride in it, and, you know, whatever happens, happens. But I think for us, it's about making it for the person, not making it for stock, I guess, to store somewhere, and maybe go and try and sell them. Like we truly, like, you know, for us, we were talking about vision statements earlier, is like, we really want to give people a chance to experience the good, the bad, and the ugly with fly fishing, and give them a rod that they can handle and made for them to make the best experience possible. Because, you know, just like a golf club, just like anything, if your equipment's not good, then it doesn't make for a very good time. So we want to take that off somebody's plate and just be like, okay, I can trust my rod. Okay, I can go have some fun, and then share the funny stories. I think that's the other thing for us, is like, we have a lot of whoopsies and a lot of like issues, but for us, that's part of fly fishing. So yeah.
So y'all had the story about the reds. But do y'all have another cumulative story about fishing that you guys would want to share?
Do you have one?
Yeah, it's I actually made a pair of rods for us, one for her, one for myself. Hers was we were making them for striper fishing to go to Lake Texoma. We kept hearing about how phenomenal the fishing was up there. We decided, well, you know, if it's a lake, we don't really have a boat, and so we wanted to get a guide to take us around. And come to find out, there's only one guy who's a fly guide up there on Texoma. By the name of Steve Holland. I'll go ahead and give him a shout out, because he was just an absolutely stellar dude. But we got there only to find out that he is one of, I think, only 250 master casting instructors in the world for fly fishing. And so, of course, the moment I hear this, I say, oh, I got to get this guy to try these things out. I need some research in the field, and, you know, get the real experts to handle it. And so I was trying to order parts really fast. I was running out of time. And so I ordered the wrong tip tops for these stupid rods. And so there was no way I could get these things in. I tried seeing if I could get them airlifted in, even at $30 a pop, just to get them, because I wanted these things built and I wanted them ready to go. And I couldn't get them, just couldn't make the mountains move. And so I went to Academy and I got a rod repair kit for a conventional bait casting rod setup. And so I had to like put some duct tape on the tip of the rod so that way it would fit this oversized tip top. It was an ungodly mess, but I wanted to be able to take it down and fix it whenever we were done, but I needed to get on the water. And so we take it out there, and I am just a nervous wreck about it, thinking this is not going to work. I'm going to lose fish because of it. She's not going to have a good time. And they work well enough. And so at the end of the day, or I should say, after the first morning run on fish, it died down. It was a pretty hot day. It was late.
But to be honest, we got a lot of stripers that day, which was super fun. So that was super cool.
They handled like a dream. And so whenever the fishing died down, he took us off to the side. Like, he just anchored the boat near just a tower that's out on the water. And he says, all right, let's have a little casting lesson. Excuse me. And so he worked with us for about half an hour to an hour, and both of us easily added 10, 15 feet to our casting just from a brief time with him. Absolutely stellar teacher, retired teacher, if I recall.
He is a retired teacher.
And that was amazing. And so then at the end of the day, as we're coming back in, I said, hey man, can you do me a favor? Would you mind casting these yourself and telling me what you think, what you like, what you don't like? And so he goes, oh, absolutely. And so he parks it off in the marina, and, you know, we've got this huge open water. And so he just starts casting. And I mean, this guy can send it to the moon. It was phenomenal watching him work. And he lays it out all the way into the backing and beyond on each of our rods. And he reels them in. You know, he's been making comments the whole time. And finally, as he gets the line completely back in, he looks at me. I said, what do you think? You know, any criticism? He goes, there's this weird weight at the end of the tip.
Oh, I know.
We know.
So it was one of those, it was a testament to him. Like, obviously he's an expert and he knew that, but it also broke our hearts just a little bit because we were this close to like having the perfect rod. And I mean, they're great now. So we got the tip tops fixed, but it was just one of those moments for us. We're like, we're this close. We're this close. So.
But yeah, that's when the masters pick it up, they can tell you a good rod from a bad rod immediately. And that was phenomenal going to the Mesquite show, where unfortunately we didn't get to talk to you there, but we met a lot of really big names and really cool people in the industry, and getting a chance to have the pros, the guides, the instructors, just take our rods and try them out on the casting pool. And we got some great reviews. Myself, I'm a bundle of insecurities. I'm new to all this, and you know, I'm still nervous about getting our name out there and getting these products out there, but this was an excellent mark in our favor. Of they loved them. Every 201, every pro there loved our rods when they tried them.
It was super cool. And it just makes you realize like how big the world of fly fishing is, but also how small it is at the same time. And I don't know if you guys have experienced that at all, like, you know, like for Brian and John, for you guys to meet and stuff like that. I mean, what kind of circumstances had to have happened for you guys to get in touch with each other? You know?
You want to talk about that, John?
That's my story.
The story of love and vengeance.
Yeah, vengeance and anger. You want to tell it? You tell it better than I do. You're like the storyteller from the Appalachian. You know, I'll let you tell that one.
Well, they heard it recently, but a really Cliff Notes version is this fly shop in Texas pissed me off. I was at Walmart checking out, just absolutely ranting and raving over voice messages to Brian. And like I was loud, and I knew I was being loud because the lady in front of me was turning around like, oh, is this guy okay? and he's like, Dave, let's start a podcast and let's just make it for everyone. All types of fishing, doesn't matter. Let's just hear stories and give out the information people need. You know, like I bought waders for the first time last April, and I didn't know about waders. I didn't know about sizing. I didn't know about wading boots, whether I needed the ones without the little booties or the ones, you know, like you use for duck hunting and stuff. I was like, yeah, that's cool. And then he's like, make sure you get a wading belt. I was like, what's a wading belt? And then, you know, we just wanted to get that information out to everyone.
Yeah.
But we met through a fellow. He is let's say acquaintance, more or less. We met him. He started up this fly company, and he was getting a lot of traction and stuff. And Brian had a podcast before this that is still around. Brian's got a lot of good episodes on there. And anyway, this guy went on Brian's podcast, and from there I started talking to Brian. And then me and Brian became what we are now. So that's working class fishing.
That's so cool. Yeah. And so we talked about vision statements. Like, what's your guys' goal with this podcast?
You know, I thought about this the other day, and I think it's Brian said a lot of really good stuff.
I've said a lot of bad stuff too.
Yeah, but
we're keeping this PG, right? Or G. This is
dude,
like Disney Plus.
No, I think, dude, this is like old school Disney.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we can, yeah. All right.
Subliminal.
You
Yeah.
know, throw the guy off the roof out of Disney.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
whoa.
Yeah.
But perceived inaccessibility is the most resounding statement that Brian's ever said on the podcast to me. He's been a really good mentor and friend otherwise, but he said there's a perceived inaccessibility in the fishing, especially in fly fishing and in the bass world, and I see it differently here in the South than he does in the Pacific Northwest, but there's still this common denominator of assholes. And you don't need everything to get on the water, but there are specific things you do need to get on the water and do it safely and have an enjoyable time.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had to shorten my vision for the podcast and Working Class Fishing Down, I'd have to say to remove the stigma of the perceived inaccessibility, keep fishing affordable, and continue to mentor and curate the sport.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of near and dear to us as well, of especially with me being as much of a newbie as I am, and building on her experience has been so beneficial. But one thing I did notice as a beginner fly fisher was you can read all that you want. You can talk to the guys at the shop, and they'll give you all the lists of you have to have these top 10 things to get started, or as soon as you get the basics down, that next step of where do I go from here? I learned how to use my local creek, or I learned how to fish on a pond that's near me. How do I step up from there? And there wasn't a lot of resources it felt that were easy to find or easy to get to. And no one really knows, well, do I really need to go out and buy $1,000 rod? Do I really need to have the finest hatch reels
Oh my gosh.
to be able to go just lake fishing or go to another body of water? And I mean, you can talk to guides and they'll tell you about the flies to use and different casting techniques, but a lot of them, kind of like you say, they'll tell you the name of the thing that you need to know, but they won't say anything more about it. Just go, yeah, just, get your double haul figured out. Well, if you're a new fisher, you don't know what that means yet. And so we kind of wanted to try and fill that niche of what's that next step? What's that intermediate level of, you got some basics, you got the cast kind of down. We're all going to spend our lifetimes mastering it, but you can get out there and do some damage now. And so we wanted to build that kind of equipment that fits that next step for an angler.
Yeah.
And I think that's incredibly important. And I'm just really glad you guys are doing that, because literally exactly what you said, it's I'm brand new, or I've been doing this for 50 years.
And you should know better. Like, that's the other thing I see is like, oh, you're not an expert. Well, then you should know better. Oh my gosh. Like, there's no investment in the next generation, it feels like. And maybe that's just like our perception of it, but it just seems like there's a lack of like next generation. Oh, go ahead, Brian.
No, I go ahead and finish. I got something to add to that.
Yeah. And so for us, I mean, yeah, you get the young whippersnappers that are like doing the fly tying and they're like 7 and 8, but then they get to their teenage years and like there's no the people that can afford to go to Florida Key, to the Keys and like go do that because they do family vacations. You just lose a lot of the next generation. And so for me, fly fishing has always been traditional, but it's only a tradition if it gets passed on. And so to me, like, okay, what are we going to do for the next generation? And, whether that is giving a rod maybe to help a younger kid get excited, or whether that is like for me, my students, I'll take them with me to fly tying class just to get them exposed to it. Or, we're going this weekend to the Tarrant Regional Water District and they promote it as like an urban fly fishing deal. I mean, there's going to be people that want to not only be able to afford it, but go take their kids and go do it and make it accessible to everyone, whether, male, female, kid, whatever, like everybody should have access to that. And John, we talked maybe last week a little bit about gatekeeping, and it just feels like if we want to keep fly fishing a tradition, we have to give it to somebody. And so that would be the next generation. So why are we not doing that? Why are we not promoting that? And if we are promoting it, it's got to be accessible to everybody. That's what we think.
So to add to what you're saying there, you know, what I found, and I live in a totally different region. Where were you from originally, Holly?
So I was born and raised in a little tiny town called Kremling, Colorado. So Grand County might be a better location for some people, or Steamboat Springs, Silverthorne, Winter Park. Like if you were to triangulate all of those, Kremling is like right in the center of all of that. But you know, I also grew up on the Colorado River, the Blue River, access to unbelievable fishing that people would literally kill for. And I didn't realize it until I moved what I had. But that was that same thing, is like I had access that a lot of people did not have access to. And so
Right.
yeah, that's where I grew up.
Well, so we're talking about passing on, you know, specifically fly fishing right now to the next generation. And I think about fishing in general. And what I see in our fishing culture here in the Pacific Northwest, because we literally have water everywhere. It's everywhere here. We have rivers and you know, we have estuaries, trib rivers, ocean, the lakes, all that stuff. And there's so many places for people to fish, yet a lot of people tend to congregate in, you know, the closest population centers. I mean, we have a major metropolitan city where salmon run through, you know, Chinook salmon. So what would be stopping people from doing that? The problem that I see a lot of is that, unlike ourselves, where we maybe had a parent that would, you know, expose us, take us out, show us the right and wrong. Now you don't have that. It's the same thing with not soft skills, but like mechanical skills, mechanical inclination. That integral part of that in-home learning is gone. So you have a lot of people now that are like, hey, I really want to try fishing. Do I know anybody that fishes? And it's like, well, no, I don't, but I can go on YouTube and learn how to fish. And you start watching these really popular YouTubers, and they're showing you like, oh, you go get this and you go get this. And to some of their credit, some of them advertise some really affordable stuff that you can go down to the local store and buy and get started. And that's great. That's fantastic. And that's, you need that kind of thing. But when it comes to putting the rubber to the road and actually getting out and doing it, it's a totally different thing. And a lot of those things like the etiquettes and you know, like low holing or snagging or, you know, things of that nature that come inherently, especially when you have, you know, migratory fish runs and things like that, where you have a lot of people fishing. There's nobody out there to really foster and nurture the good sportsmanship and that. And so it becomes a real barrier for a lot of people that want to try, in our case, salmon or steelhead fishing. Those are two different things. Bass fishing here, you know, it's one of those things. It's becoming more popular because a lot more people from the Midwest and the East Coast are moving here. But you know, there's a lot of gatekeeping with salmon, trout, and steelhead fishing here. We do have blue ribbon rivers. We have rivers that have 28 to 30 inch bull trout or dollies at steelhead. They're insane. Salmon are insane. Sturgeon are insane, you know, but it takes having somebody that really knows what they're doing to help you to get to those fish. But it gets gate kept, because it's like, no, you have to, you know, if you want to go catch sturgeon, you got to go get a 22-foot D-hole sled so you can go out in Columbia River. You got to run, you know, a $450 combo, and then you got to put an 85-pound braid, 130-pound Dacron leader, 7/0 hooks, whole shad, and that's so you can go play with 8 to 12-foot fish. And then, you know, salmon and steelhead, you have to have a $400 trolling combo, a boat with a trolling motor, all this other stuff. That's not all true. But there's nobody out there to really debunk it. You know, that it's not like, oh, I can go buy $5 worth of spinning glows, 3/0 hooks, some weight, and go out and plunk for fish. Or, you know, that gatekeeping happens a lot. And it's because there's a lot of kids now and a lot of younger people that are just basically learning how to fish from YouTube. There's no physical mentorship to that. Mm-hmm. Fly fishing, you know, John told you how we got this whole thing started. Fly fishing here, it gets downright ugly and nasty, and it's not cool how things happen here. You have, I'm going to say, I think I've said this a million times, but I think I have like 6 or 7 fly shops within 20 minutes of my house. That's how many fly shops are here.
Oh,
And a
yeah.
lot of people are like, oh man, I wish I had that. Average working person can't go into those fly shops because unless you have a credit card with a $15,000 to $30,000 limit, you can't go in there. They won't even look at you. You know, it's like, oh, well, you know, how much do you want to spend? Well, I want to spend a couple $100 to get started. They're like, yeah, go over to the Orbis store and get a piece of crap from there. It's like, but that's actually a nice rod, you know, or, you know, it's like, you know, oh, well, you know, if you don't get the 0 weight sage, you know, you're just wrong. You know, I've heard that said before, you know, for like panfish. And it's like, it's a freaking little bluegill, you know, really, we could go out and catch it with strings and sticks. The bad part about what's really happened around here, which I'm glad that you guys are debunking, is that and working towards improving, is that there's a lot of gatekeeping, and it's to keep people out, because for whatever reason people think that if we scare these people away, we're going to have all the fish to ourselves until they die and there's nobody else left to really fish for it. And then you've just basically condemned, you know, a part of our culture, essentially, to die. That's the bad part. You're condemning it, and it has no access. So yeah. Anyways, I wanted to add that. I know that drug on forever, but
no, and that's the thing for me. Like as an educator, like there is this next generation. They're insane. Like they want to know everything, but they also, as a generation, have the most access to the most information out there. And so when you tell them, hey, let's go do this, they're going to research it, they're going to figure it out, but they don't, like you said, they don't have that actual physical role model in their lives to go take them. And so to make it accessible to them, and there's only so much that everybody can actually do. But, you know, bringing up your point, like talking about good sportsmanship. Well, if you don't teach them, who's going to, like, they got to learn sometime. And so if you teach the next generation about that, then they're the ones that are going to be turning 18 and voting. And, you know, we're seeing a lot of those bills that are coming in talking, you know, like what was the SB something? You guys might have to help me out on that. The one that was in Florida that was talking about the fishing in Florida and issues with that.
We have one that's right now a petition initiative, or an initiative petition here in Oregon, to basically ban fishing, hunting, anything to do with even photography, with wildlife, owning pets, anything else. It's Oregon.
Yeah. So for us, it was more about, like, you know, conservation and making sure that, like, kids don't know until they know. And so, you know, if they're like, well, I'm not going to take these kids because they're going to be ruining all this stuff, they actually really care. Like a lot of, like, my kids, they care about, like, the classes that they're taking. They care about, like, my little environmental science. And, you know, just a testament to my kids. I mean, we live in a, like, or at least I teach in a very low socioeconomic school where kids are lucky to get out of their apartments. And so to talk about the environmental issues and, like, how we can conserve, and, you know, talking about whether, you know, like, what is hunting, and, like, we get to talk about that and have that discussion. And, you know, you have kids who are like, why would I hunt? And it's like, whoa, like, that's actually a really great way to conserve and maintain populations. And so, like, going back and forth on that. But I'm the only AP environmental science teacher on our campus, and we have like 2,000 kids. So I can only impact a very small amount, but I'm not going to put it on organizations, but I do think that it is a responsibility as a business owner to promote, like I was saying, like, that next generation, because they want to. And I think for the future, like, if we want to have a future, like, they're going to be the ones that are going to be eventually taking care of us. So they are the ones that need to be informed and understand. And until they get at that information, they're going to do what they want. And, you know, unless they're informed, but they're going to make informed decisions. And I definitely see that in our next generation, whether everybody likes them or not, but they have the most access to the most information, and they really have a lot of power that they are ready to wield. And so direct them and show them and guide them to that.
You know, Kelly Gallup, I'm a huge fanboy, but he said, you know, they were talking about the future generations, and then his buddy actually drew this picture. They're out at a bar, like, just stone rage and blind drunk, just talking mad crap with each other. And his buddy drew this picture, and for the life of me, I can't remember the name of it, but it was depicting the old angler with the new, and he drew like this guy going out there with his, you know, his like, I don't know, his like leather hat and his vest and his bamboo fly rod and all this stuff. And then the new angler was the dude in shorts, flip flops, and had beer in his waiting like sling pack, and his fly rod kicked over his shoulder. You know, it is a different environment now for fishing than it was back then, but I think it's moving in a positive direction, pending social media, of course, but fishing itself, I think, is moving in a positive direction. You're seeing more and more, this isn't just the fly fishing podcast, but you're seeing more and more fly anglers now, that it's not all these dudes out there smoking cigars on sandbars, having steaks grilled for them for their guide trip. You know, it's like Riley, he's I mean, he's probably around my age, but he's a guide, and he absolutely slays out on like steelhead, and then he guides up in Alaska and stuff like that. And the dude's like mega chill, like incredibly chill. Like I don't think he's got a bone in his body that's not chill. Like I mean, Brian went out with him. Brian, you can tell him about that. But
well, to me, and I really enjoy being, you know, talking with guides and stuff like that. And the guides around here, this is the paradox. So you guys make rods, you make rod socks, you make accessories, and you make really cool stuff for people to get out and fish. But you're warm and welcoming with what you do. And it's like, hey, this is for anybody, everybody. This is cool stuff. You're not gonna, you know, sit there and shun and shove somebody away. The guides around here are a lot like that. Now, some could say maybe they're a bit narcissistic in some aspects. Some might even say that they're, you know, expert manipulators in a lot of ways. But they're actually really nice guys. And the cool part about all of them is that they'll actually tell you how to catch fish. They won't tell you where the fish are. But they're like, yeah, on that river, do this. And it's like, all right, I'll try that. Boom, you catch fish. And it's like, wow, that's a miracle, you know. It's some of the most simple stuff ever. But this is what I'll say about Riley. Riley, my wife and I went out fishing with him. My wife never caught a steelhead before. I mean, anything bigger than like a stock or rainbow trout. And I hooked the first fish, and it's like in this little tiny chute next to the drift boat, and I reeled that one up. I hand my wife off this kelted, you know, steelhead. He wasn't able to spawn, and he's just blowing milt everywhere. And Riley's just like, whoa, man, don't let it shoot all over my boat, you know? I mean, he was just kind of like that. And as I kicked back, and then my wife hooks the third one, and it's a big hen. It's like a 12 or 13 pound fish, and it's just ripping, dragging, bouncing down. And he's kicked back over there. He's just smiling ear to ear. He's like, maybe we should stop for lunch afterwards. And she's over there. She's like, I got a big fish, you know? So my wife's melting down, and he's kicked back like this. He's like, you want to net it, Brian? And he's just like watching this whole thing, smiling like, you know, he looks like the Joker. And then we stop, and then we just start floating down the river. He's got cold pizza and a rock star. He's just sitting there eating and drifting down. And I'm all like, where's the next fish at? You know? And he's like, you know what I noticed is if you get all like worked up about fish, you'll never catch them. So I just like to kick back. And we're just like floating down the river, and you know, that's just the way he is. But the dude knows how to catch fish, and he knows how to catch a lot. It's kind of like the last guy I went with, Logan. He's young, he's excitable, but he's so much fun to be around. And he's like, hey, let's get breakfast before we go. And I'm like ready to go jump into the boat, and I'm like, yeah, let's go get steelhead, you know. And he's all like, oh, I want to have some like bacon and eggs, and I got to sell some super baits to some dude. And I mean, it's just like, that's the way the guides are around here. They're like, yeah, we'll go catch some fish, and you know, so they're like totally cool. But then you go like roll into a fly shop, and they're like, oh yeah, you know, you got to get like G4 waders and all that, or else, you know, you're a piece of crap. And it's like, how does that work? You know, I mean, come on.
No, I don't know. You turn away so many people doing that, and maybe that's what their intention is. I can't attest to that, but yeah, weird vibes. I mean, vibes just walking in will definitely like trigger a lot of people. And so
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just, it's not, I guess to me, it's like, that just doesn't seem reasonable. Like that just doesn't seem necessary, I guess.
It's just kind of the culture here. Like, but if I go over to Bend as for example, and so Bend has, 3, 4, 5, well, 3 good rivers in the vicinity, 3 to 4, yeah, somewhere in the vicinity. And when I say vicinity, 100-mile radius, Bend, Oregon. But then you have all the Cascade Lakes. So then you throw on a lot of other water bodies. There's 3 fly shops in Bend. There's one in the little resort village called Sun River to the south. I've only went in there once, and I kind of went in and I turned around, walked back out, because you get that vibe. It's like, eh. I went into the one down at the old Mill District in Bend, which is like downtown. Super cool guys. I was like, oh, hey, you guys aren't jerks, yeah, I'll buy some stuff here. So you buy, a couple things, and you're like, what's working? You're like, oh, some of those elk hair caddis and some of this. I was like, all right, I'll buy some of those because you guys were cool,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, you guys are cool. You weren't being jerks or anything else. And then you go over and drool all over like the $500 reels. And it's like, yeah, it's cool to drool over them. Do you need it? No, but they still look cool. But yeah, you get that weird vibe.
Yeah, but I mean, when you find the people who don't give you that kind of vibe, like you say, the ones that are warm and inviting, I mean, that keeps us coming back time and time again just to visit. And we got a really cool guy, he's an Englishman at our local Orvis here in Fort Worth. That he is a trip of. He started off at a smaller store. I think they were a little bit of a chain, but they were doing fly tying classes, and they give you the supplies, and they just kind of encourage you to get your own equipment or after the first couple of classes.
And they gave you free beer. I think that's important. That's important.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Can't beat that.
But it was that was something that like he really led the charge on, and it was a blast, and that really got us into fly tying. And then whenever he got offered a position at the Orvis, we followed him over there. No real loyalty to brand specifically, but to that guy, because he is just absolutely a trip. We love him. And so we always have to go compete with photos and stories whenever we go talk to him. And he is an absolute trip. And he's actually the one that had recommended us the place where we went fishing on the coast and that's how I got hooked into my redfish that changed my life. Was he was telling us areas, because I guess he had hired a guide, but he was willing to share with us a couple of spots that they had some good luck with. And so he just kind of dropped pins on our Google Maps or whatever. And so we went down there with our kayaks, and we ended up having good luck just because he was willing to share that, even though we didn't pay for that information. He did. Mm-hmm. He was still willing to help us out. And again, from a conservation standpoint, we don't harvest fish. We're pretty much catch and release. We're not big on seafood. So we're not taking from the population. We try and handle them as carefully and safely as possible, so that fish gets to be caught next year, and maybe he's even bigger by then. And so just working with anglers like that, you can share info. You can even share spots to a certain extent if you trust them. But if you're a good angler and you're following good ethics and you're big into conservation, you're not hurting the water to be out there, and you get to pay attention to the ecosystem and the health of your body of water and be part of that, contribute instead of taking from it.
Brian, I was going to ask you, so up in the Pacific Northwest, what is your public versus private land situation? Like, is there more public than private or more private than public up there?
There's definitely a lot more public land in the West. And that's from the standpoint of, so let's look at all the entities that are involved. So you have U.S. Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, state forestry, so the state forests, and then you also have like Oregon Parks and Recreation. I was going to call it the Oregon Department of Parks and Recreation. Maybe that's what it is. But you have your parks and recreation. So you have a lot of public land. Like if I look at my Onyx, so I don't know if you guys use Onyx or not.
We have to, because there's and that's what led me to this question. There's so much private in Texas. Like we're afraid, like we're in Texas, we're afraid of our, stepping on someone else's property without permission. So we have to worry about that, but continue on. Yeah.
So we have a lot of public land access. And one thing I will say, so nobody in Oregon owns 1 square centimeter of beach whatsoever. It's against the law. even though you could look at Onyx and there's like condo associations at different like places, and they'll have the beachfront condos, which, by the way, if you own a condo at the coast, I don't know what's wrong with you, but when that tsunami comes, you're going to get sent into orbit. So, but they have those beachfront houses. It says they own out to the surf. They don't own out to the surf. It's a really bizarre thing with tax lots and things like that. However, nobody owns any part of the Oregon coast. It's all publicly owned. So anybody, anytime, anywhere, as long as there's a public access point, can go out onto the beach and go out there. So here in the Northwest, same with the Washington coast. As far as I know, nobody can own any part of that. All of the inland estuaries, tidal waters, all that, are all public. All navigable waterways are public here. Below the mean high water mark. So, and navigable waterways is kind of a contested subject, because if you go by the early 1900s standard, before we put in hydroelectric and flood mitigation dams, that would mean that the navigable waterway would be able to transport logs, in our case, because we do a lot of timber, it's a lot of lumber up here. It would have been able to float logs and other raw natural resource down. So that opens up a big spectrum of a lot of smaller rivers that you'd be like, well, you can't get a barge or a ship up that river. Well, it wasn't necessarily a ship or a barge. It could be a log raft coming down, or, it was something of that nature. So there is a lot of open public land here, and they're attempting to buy more and more from private owners for public access, especially around rivers. I won't say how epic some of these rivers are, but the Deschutes River, have you guys ever heard of that river?
Yes, absolutely. Like we met a guy on a river down here in Texas who came from that area and just said it was getting, like, the population was insane. It was exploding, whatever. But
It is
honest about all of the fish and all of the just the ecosystem there, and he said it was insane.
I mean,
yes.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say the state record whitefish and pending world record just came off the Deschutes.
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a slob. It was a it was a total slob. I think it was at 5.5 pounds or something like that. I mean, I've caught some big whitefish, and I thought I was hooked into like a coho salmon. But it was no 5.5 pound whitefish. Anyways, the lower Deschutes River. So let's start at the town of Madras. That's kind of the start point. Lake Billy Chinook down. So you have Lake Billy Chinook, which is where the Metolius feeds in, the Middle Deschutes, the Crooked River, all these, and the Metolius is a fly fishing only river, huge bull trout, if you can trick them. Anyways, you start there. That entire reservoir is open to the public. It's owned by Portland General Electric. But one arm, the Metolius arm up to a certain boundary, is owned by Warm Springs, the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. That's part of the reservation.
Okay.
You go down below that and you extend out, and you have the entire stretch of Warm Springs on the west side of the river. They own and basically control all of the stream ecology of the Deschutes in that section. So if they say we don't want fishing because we want passage for salmon and steelhead, nobody fishes that section. But basically from the town of Maupin to the mouth, the BLM, the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, Oregon State Parks, and all those folks have bought pretty much every piece of riverside land all the way through there. They put in campgrounds, hiking trails. You can start in Maupin if you want to go roll some class 3 and 4 rapids all the way down to the mouth at Moody, where it discharges into the Columbia River. And you have like 80 miles of nothing but public land, canyons, bighorn sheep. It's insane. I grew up on the river, so I don't have the appreciation, but I try to build my appreciation up when I tell people about it, because it used to just be, we're going camping on the Deschutes and it's an hour and a half from home, and people are all like, I can't believe you live an hour and a half from the Deschutes. That's like one of the biggest blue ribbon rivers in the world. You can go catch steelhead on streamers there. It's like, that's how bad it is.
I share that experience with you. I mean, like I said, my family, we worked on a working cattle ranch on the Colorado River. And so I got to work with like my family, and we hired a bunch of conservation analysts, and my dad worked with them, and like we did like a diversion and made sure that it worked with all the spawning of all the, you know, the trout that are going through there. And so like I now appreciate it more. And the reason that I asked that is because here in Texas, complete opposite. Oh my gosh, like for us, the accessibility is slim to none. And we have the toughest time going and enjoying stuff, because when they stock trout down here, they have a hatchery just below the Possum Kingdom Dam, and they'll take those trout and they load them up, and then they go and disperse them into ponds, into little areas. Well, everybody knows exactly where they drop them off because they make that public knowledge. Totally fine for that. Just everybody hits that the day that those fish are literally coming down the chute of the truck. They're just scooping them up with nets and like scooping them up or putting them on lines and stuff. So for us, our accessibility is one of, I think, our biggest hindrances. Like there's no public land. We tried to go to, what was it called? The Guadalupe River down in Austin. And we were looking for browns because the limestone formation causes that deep trenches, and it's cold enough to keep browns, and they're beautiful, so beautiful. But we had to buy a parking pass at an RV park to get access to the water. And once you're in the water, you could only go so far, because then there's wires hanging across saying that this is private land. And so it is totally different here in Texas. And so for us, I think that was such a huge difference between Colorado and Texas, is because to me, I'm like, oh, let's just, you know, we throw in a pole and let's go fishing. And here we have to do that on X, and we have to be like, okay, what's public, what's private? And then, you know, even though it might be a public area, it's still owned by somebody, and you still have to pay to get permission just to go fish. It's been bonkers here. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think somebody once told me we're 80% private owned here in Texas. So like all the land, out of all the land available, 80% of it's private.
That's a big state. That's a big 80%.
That's a lot of land.
Yeah, don't take that for gospel. That was just hearsay, but I mean, it sounds pretty accurate from our experience. And yeah, the water system may be accessible, but to get to it, that's the trick, is you got to cross the property.
Yeah.
So when you find a good spot.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're up. You're up.
Sorry. I just cut you guys off. I feel really bad about that.
No.
There's a little shop on the Guad that they offer parking there, and then access to the river. If you're a TU member, it's free parking.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we found little shops here and there, and we ended up settling with the RV park that we found. That there's a couple of places like that, but I mean, even the little park stretches, campsites, and everything, it's pay to play in a lot of places, and so there just wasn't a ton of access. There was a couple of ways, but that was kind of disappointing. But you know, it was our first time into the New Braunfels area. We were just trying to kind of we like trying new restaurants, breweries, wineries, things like that. So fortunately, we could still make a trip out of it. But yeah, that was kind of eye-opening to see just how much the riverbank is owned. And like she said, after I went up to Colorado a few times with her and see people literally pitching a tent on a lot on the side of the road wherever they want to go, because there's just so much public land and so much that you could do. I was blown away. I grew up here in Texas. I knew no different until we started seeing all the cool things that you can do. Just the free parking spaces that then, you might have to hike to the river, but you know, the river is yours for the wandering, as long as you're being careful and not just like overpressuring fish, things like that, and being respectful of other anglers. It was so impressive that it can be done. I mean, it can be made accessible to a huge number of people if done properly.
Yeah. So down here for us, that's why we go to the coast. It just makes it accessible. Like we can go to the coast and go get a ton of stuff. There's so many species, and that, there is so many species here in Texas, and it's about where can you get on the water. That's what we struggle with the most. At least that's what I feel. And John, you can chime in on where you're at and if that's an issue.
Oh no, it is. I mean, I'm 10 minutes roughly from Lake Wright Patman, which feeds into the Sulphur, but the Sulphur is a diverging river off of the Red, so it's kind of weird. Like all the way down in Arkansas, Louisiana, you'll see parts of the Red, and then you'll see where the Sulphur River connects into it. But I've got the Sulphur River, I've got a this really bizarre like runoff drainage little lake, and then Lake Wright Patman. And those are fun to fish and all, but with those being public waters, which is great, I'm not saying public water is bad, they're just incredibly pressured. And it's really tough fishing. So I go into Arkansas. I live on the border. It's the logical solution for me because I'm a trout bum, but the accessibility is absolutely an issue. Because we are so limited, these fisheries are incredibly pressured.
Yeah.
And honestly, not that Texas Parks and Wildlife listens to this, but they're really poorly managed, to be quite frank about it. Even our trout stocking this year was absolutely horrendous. We had 4,800 trout over 2 stockings put into our local pond here in the middle of the town. And literally I had bank anglers like fishing marshmallows and night crawlers and power bait. They didn't catch anything, is the thing. They didn't catch anything. They kept asking me, I guess because I fly fish, they're like, hey, did they stock trout? I was like, dude, I've caught one. They had to have stocked them because I've caught one, but they definitely didn't put 4,800 fish in this 1 acre pond.
Yeah, you should have seen them teeming like at the top. You would have seen something. Yeah.
But there's nothing. There were no fish there. And I called Texas Parks and Wildlife and I said, hey, did you guys stock Spring Lake Park, which is the park here? And they're like, yeah, we stocked it. It's like, oh shit. Really just kind of I still want answers for that. Not because I'm like, I pay for a fishing license, I need answers, which you can do because they work for you, but I want answers specifically because there are no fish there. What happened?
Yeah. And my little scientific brain, I don't know if you guys ever heard of Science on the Fly. So you're a fly fisherman and you can like sign up and you get to be a part of this team. And every time you go fishing, you collect some water samples and you get to test it. And then you send it to a local testing facility that they approve of, get those numbers. And then we can kind of see the changes in the water as you get to go fish and start seeing those changes. And part of me wonders how much they monitor, because for me, I'm like, the place that we go trout fishing, like on the Brazos, looks fishy. It's got the beautiful ripples, it's got sandbars, it's got everything. I'm like, this looks like Colorado for just a brief moment. Like, this looks good. And when I start seeing algae blooms and I start seeing like that, I'm not saying they have to manage the river, but I am saying that there's something going on with the ecology. And when they just dump fish, it's a suicide mission for those poor fish. And that it breaks my heart a little bit, because once again, I just feel like there is a missing link that we're so close. I think we could really do something cool. And I don't know what power we have, but it would be something that we would like to be a part of. And that's something that I'd like to look into, maybe like during my summer breaks and stuff, is looking into what's going on there. So keep that in mind, John. And if I get some time during the summer, we'll start looking into that. I think that would be a cool, interesting piece.
And another thing too is, like navigable waterways here in Texas, completely different. You have to have a captain's license to guide navigable waterways in the state of Texas. So your Lake Texoma guide is also a captain. And I was like, reading and studying about all that stuff prior to getting my guy's license. It was pretty intimidating. I was like, do I have to get a captain's license? So then now you're doing all this quick and dirty research. Is this river navigable? If the answer is no, then you're clear. But if it's yes, then you cannot guide that river without a captain's license, or you will be paying some absolutely ridiculous fines.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So it's definitely, I'm glad Brian's on to like speak to the different areas, because we got Colorado, we got Texas, and then we got the Pacific Northwest. Now we're gonna have to find someone on the East Coast to chime in a little bit. It's fascinating to me to learn all the different areas, especially if we haven't been there yet. we're going to, and maybe Brian will be gracious enough to host us someday. But
yeah, just come on up. I'll show you stuff that blow your mind.
oh my gosh. So tell me about the rods that are in the background there. What do you got? If you don't mind me asking.
Oh, let's see. I got a couple Maxons in here because I'm kind of a Maxon guy. So I got a Stonefly 4-weight. Then I got a Falcon 10-weight. That's my salmon and steelhead rod.
Yeah.
I do a lot of I nymph for them, and I'll throw streamers too. Let's see. I got a Lamiglass red line here that's set up for steelhead drift fishing. I got a couple of Shimano scimitars. One of them set up for spin casting with spoons and spinners. And the other one, well, yeah, that one's got a spin caster. The other one's a spinning reel setup that I got there. And then up on the ceiling, I got a couple more fly rods and 4 bait casting trolling rods and a couple float rods for salmon steelhead. So yeah,
it's tough. I mean, it's tough to keep it all in line, isn't it? Like
it is
real fast.
And then I got a rack over here that's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 more rods on it that have all various natures and sizes and shapes. So yeah, I think I got like 25 or 30 rods here. And
Awesome.
These ones I just have down because I'll go up to a place I call the R&D lab. And if you guys ever watch any of the videos on YouTube, I go up there and I try different things because it's stocked with massive trout. And they're not stupid. They're not smart, but they're just really angry. There's just something about them. They attack everything in sight. So if John ties a nymph and it's like, hey, dude, I want to get this with a fish, in a fish's mouth, I'll go up and catch like a 24-inch trout and just have it thrash my rod to death. And I'll be like, hey, dude, check this out. They're just angry fish, spoon fishing. It just absolutely drives them nuts. Nymphing, dry flies, they're starting to pop on midge hatches now here. And then they really, I've got a couple on woolly buggers, but for whatever reason, they're really into balanced leeches. That's when you get the toads, the slob fish. They're like 5 or 6 pounds. So I keep all these rods ready to go because I'll just tell my wife, I'll be like, all right, you know what? I'm heading up to the lake. I'm going to go spend a couple hours up there. It's 20 minutes from my house. I'll just buzz up there and I'm up there tossing flies and enjoying myself.
Yeah.
And sometimes she joins me. So, and
good.
she goes up
That's
there.
Awesome.
Yeah. Sometimes my daughter joins me. So
now, are they spin casters or are they fly casters? Or both?
So my wife, she's learning how to cast, but I have a nymphing rod with an indicator on it right now. Mm-hmm. So that's probably not the best thing to learn how to cast with, but she caught up in that lake. I was like, well, just go fish over here. It's kind of half frozen. I was like, well, fish over here. She's like, well, I don't mind. She's standing up there on the dock and she's, doing the arcing, like she's arcing the cast. You're like, no, straighten out, walk your wrist, And she's like, I don't care. She casts out and the indicator goes down. She strip sets like she's just like jacking like a steelhead. Boom, the thing just stops and she's like, oh God, I got a big fish. And you just see this flash that's like 29 inches on the side. Whop, 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 snaps off the tippet. She's like, no.
Oh my gosh.
And then she proceeds to catch like a couple 19-inch fish. And then I went over there. I'm like, well, screw this. I'm fishing like a lower lake. They're both fire suppression ponds. And so I'm fishing in the lower one that's bigger. I'm getting like little stalkers. I'm like, screw this. I'm going to go over there. I had the only other rod I had was my steelhead rod. It's a good thing. I had 0x tippet on and I put on a nymph that John had tied. And the bobber, the indicator drains, I strip and it goes doing like that. And I'm like, oh, this is a big fish. And it went under the ice. And luckily the ice was thin enough that when my tippet went through it, it sliced through the ice. I should have had a video going. But I just horsed the fish back up and I showed her and it was like missing half of its tail. I posted it on the Instagram. But I was like, what is going on with this fish? And I reel it up and it's like its tail got ripped off. I think they're triploid, so they don't technically spawn where they're sterile, but they still try to spawn. And I think that all these fish, these horses are like fighting each other in the lake trying to spawn. Oh yeah. Fun stuff. Yeah. So yeah, I keep all these rods behind me and I'm like, I get bored. I'm like, I'm going to go fish for a little bit. Or I live a mile from the river. So I just go down there. Well, I have 2 rivers that I live a mile from. So I got the big river and I got the little river. And little river, I'll go fish steelhead. Big river, I'll fish salmon and sturgeon when they're
Look
running.
at him just flexing. Look at him. He just,
Yeah, no big deal.
Oh my
Like
goodness.
I said, we got
It's
tons
gonna
of
be
water
today.
around.
Well, let me
When summer comes around, it'll be bass. That's smallmouth everywhere.
Yeah.
And panfish.
Dude, you absolutely tore up smallies last year, and I think the most panfish flies I've ever sold in my life is to Brian, because he is a panfish monster. Like,
I love it.
You got to be quick on the draw with those little guys when they bite.
Oh, geez. Well, it's ridiculous. Like, John's like, dude, bluegill can fight. And I'm like, I know they can fight. That's why I try to catch them all the time, because the trout just kind of like, they just kind of side flop, and everybody's like, how can you be so dastardly towards a majestic trout? It's like, I've only caught like 1 million of them in my life. But a panfish, I don't know. That little 7-inch fish will peel drag. That's the thing that gets me. I'm just over there, I'm giggling. You just giggle because it's like that. You're like, look at that, it's going across the lake. It's like racing around and everything. I love it.
They have no pattern whatsoever, so like it's not like you fish the bubble line or anything like that. You just got to find the rocks, and those little suckers will dart, get your fly, and then just take off, and you're like, what is happening? You didn't even know they were there. That's the other fun part. They are so good at hiding, you have no idea they're there.
The other one is when you hook one and you're getting ready to haul, you're like, stupid fish, and then it goes flying through the air, attached to your hook.
Oh, that was absolutely one of my favorites. This one caught my hook, and he just bolted straight away from me. And I just had the line pinched against the rod, and I was just watching him go for a minute. And he got to the point where the rod was flexing, and then just got overpowered, and out he comes out the surface of the water, catapulted. Poor little guy. But man, they got spirit. I love those little guys.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I love them. I mean, I would rather catch like 1 million bluegill than one trout. I don't know why that is, but everybody's like, I want to go catch trout. And I was like, I'd rather go catch bluegill. Number one, the most intriguing thing personally to me, and maybe this works for John, but they come up and it's like that when they grab the fly, and I'm like,
they don't mess around.
No, they don't. They like, I think Steve Ranella on the Meat Eater, I was listening to one of his episodes, and what did he say? He said some guy said he was laying shirtless down on a dock, and a bluegill came up and like grabbed him by the nipple or something like that. I was like, I would love to see that. I would love to see a bluegill just come up and like that, just trying to pry out the doggies, like that.
Oh yeah.
I'd pay money to watch that.
They're just such opportunistic deals. I'll never forget. We had this cute little stream that we get a chance to go to. We park at the church parking lot that no one's ever there, and we just dive over this little bank, and it's so cute. But we're trying new rods, we're trying new flies, and we're just like, okay, let's experiment a little bit. So mainly I would focus on like, okay, I'm gonna work on my casting today. So I go and I'm like, okay, so I get to the point where I don't think anything's gonna bite, and so I'm getting ready to pull it out of the water, and sure enough, that little sucker will bite. And one time I grabbed it, and it just like flung it behind me because they're light enough that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start pulling back, and I just see this streak going across. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, just felt bad. They're kamikaze, man. They're on a mission.
My favorite way to fish for bluegill is on dries, because let me tell you, you can't beat panfish on the dry fly. You can't. It's irresistible. And even a 4-weight, they're taking, you're just like, and the next, they're just gone. They're just sailing. They're just like, they're like, help.
I love the diversity that we have. That same creek that we go to, I was actually down there one day, and I just made up my mind. I'd had an attitude when I first got in fly casting. I'm not going to go for catfish. I don't want to mess with bottom feeders. That's not what we're here to do. And so I was out there going for the bass that we had there and the little sunfish, and I was standing over a well or a deeper hole there. And all of a sudden, the clouds part, the sun shines down. I'm standing around on top of it, and I see this column of a bunch of big fish swirling. Got this tiny lightweight rod, and the idiot part of my brain goes, do it. Just flip the fly back over into there. And just as soon as it hit the water, I thought my rod, or that my hook had hooked into the back of a truck, as one of these that just takes it and dives. And that was a good 30-minute fight trying to keep my rod from snapping on that thing. And it was I think about a 4-pound channel cat. And when I finally pulled him up, I could not believe that rod handled it and that I was playing it cool enough, because usually, I just want to haul them in, but just enjoying the time of that. And that was a blast.
I mean, those catfish are interesting on the fly. Like they're weird. They're almost like little mini muscular sharks is the best way I can describe it. They're just straight muscle, and they just like, I mean, they're fighters, man. And you pull them out and they're all smooth, and you're just like, what kind of fish is this? But man, they're kind of fun to fight. We've got them in Glenrose. Alex actually caught one in Glenrose. We caught some here. I mean, we don't actively go pursue that, but it's kind of fun to get them because they are super aggressive. But I think John's going to hook us up with some good flies for some carp. That's our next target. We haven't done the carp thing.
I'll send you some
So
for
we're excited.
catfish too.
Oh yeah.
Oh, nice.
I do actively pursue catfish on the fly.
It is a blast. Yeah, 10 out of 10 would do it any day. They are a hoot.
Well, we're coming up on our hour here, and I hate to cut everyone off, but man, this has been a blast. And just thanks so much for coming on and sharing. And we didn't even really talk a lot about y'all's rods, I feel like, but
No, that's okay. I guess that's the thing, is like, we're here if someone's interested, and if not, we're here for stories, and we appreciate both of those equally. Like that's totally fine by us. So
Yeah, maybe we just need to make this a series.
I'm just saying, I'm not.
well,
opposed to
there's
that.
always time for episode 2. But
Yeah.
Holli and Alex, where can people find y'all?
Do you want me to take it, or you got it?
Well, we are on most social media. We've got a Facebook presence and an Instagram account. Our social media manager has been just killing it, as well as some advice from our good friend John here. As well as we do have a website, pretty straightforward, just laughingstockflyfishing.com, or Google us, Laughing Stock Fly Fishing. We pop up. And yeah, I mean, it's just the two of us. So if you reach out to the email, or I believe our number's on the website, I mean, that's my personal cell phone.
Yeah.
So be nice. But no, we are totally up to talk with you, just talk shop. There's some people around that are trying to do some fly rod building classes. And so we've kind of been invited to check that out. And they might have us teaching. So we're kind of growing in the area. We didn't really know what to expect, but we're learning as we go.
Yeah, so all of our handles are Laughing Stock Fly Fishing. So whether that is Instagram, or whether that is Facebook, or our website, it's laughingstockflyfishing.com. Like, not a lot of people want to name their stuff Laughing Stock, we realize. So I think we're okay. And for us, we're going to be out there at the Tarrant Region Water District this weekend, which would be the 12th.
Trinity Fly.
Oh, yeah, Tarrant Region Water District, the Fly Fest. And then we also are wanting to work with Johnny Martinez at Lake Athens, and maybe get a booth or something set up there. But really for us, it's about one person at a time. When you go to our website, there's like a place you can see our rods. You get to learn about us a little bit if you're interested, and then you get to see the kind of the rods that we would love to build, and then species and all that. And then you click you click an interest form, and that sends it to us that you're interested in it, and then we can have that conversation. Like, we just don't have anything in stock, because we want to customize it per customer. So we're kind of unique in that sense. We have some rods built for people to demo if they're interested, but it's more creating something for each individual person. I think one of the cool specialties that Alex has found out is I'm a lefty. And so for me, he's able to build a rod that's actually custom to left-handed people. And I'm not saying that's our end all be all, but just little things like that. We take that into consideration. Color choices, right, left-handed. Do you have a rod that you like to use? We can kind of cater to that. Do you have any rod blank preferences? Like, it's kind of open-ended, which means a lot of choices, but we know that people are going to know what they like and what they don't like. And we're here to help them with what they like. So that's kind of our spiel, I guess. Anything else?
That pretty well covers it.
Yeah.
Just really, thanks so much for coming on. It has been an absolute blast. Not only meeting you guys, but being able to talk to you guys and make some good friendships. So thanks for that.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
Yeah, we're excited. But like, this is, and I don't know if anybody's going to listen to this in terms of our friends, but this is our first one. So we're super excited, and like, thank you for taking a chance on us and meeting with us and talking shop. It's always super fun. So we appreciate this, and we look forward to the next the next round.
Absolutely.
It was good to meet you too, Brian. Sorry.
No.
This is our first time meeting you too. So this was a blast.
Yeah, no, thank you for taking the time to come on and kind of work with our schedule and everything else. It's a little bit hectic currently, but we really appreciate you guys being here, sharing your stories, talking about all the cool stuff. This is all integral in our fishing community, whether it's fly, conventional angling, anything else. So it's really good to have folks like yourselves out there that are really into not only the conservation part, but also the public access, and also just in general, just sharing all of the differences between everything. I think that's what brings all this together, is our connectivity between, I'm from this region, you're from that region, this person's from this region, and we all kind of talk, but we all share the common language of fishing. So thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
And as always, I am John Morris, and this is Brian Keachley, and thanks for tuning in to Working Class Fishing. Once again, you can find Holli and Alex at Laughing Stock Fly Fishing on Instagram, Facebook, and their website is laughingstockflyfishing.com. You can find us at Working Class Fishing on Instagram, Working Class Fishing Podcast on YouTube, Working Class Fishing on Facebook, and pretty much all other facets. Podcast will be available on Anchor and all other major listening platforms. And thanks for listening. And I hope everyone has a great night.
All right. Thanks.
See ya.